I am so excited. This is fast becoming the best job ever. Today I get to speak with Naomi Simson. You might recognise her from Shark Tank Australia, where she's one of the panelists. You might know her as the founder of RedBalloon. She founded that in 2001 to great success. She also co-founded the Big Red Group in 2017, which turns over $100 million a year. She lives by the motto, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. She's the governor of the Cerebral Palsy Alliance. And I can't wait to talk to her about that. She sells and commissions her own artwork, and it's not shit. It's really good. She's got a couple of adult children. She's got 3 million followers on LinkedIn. She's an absolute force, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with you today. Welcome, Naomi.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
I was given a RedBalloon voucher, and I got some great snooker lessons from a championship snooker player. I'm a happy customer. I got a great experience out of it. And for those watching who aren't familiar with RedBalloon, suss them out. They're a really good organization. They offer experiences and really enough experiences to suit anybody. Because I remember thinking, oh, don't pigeonhole me. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm probably going to want to do something pretty kooky.
Yeah.
And there was more than enough for my tastes.
Yeah.
So I have RedBalloon to thank for my snooker lessons and my improvement in the game of pool and snooker.
Yes, and then something to talk about. I never knew, like 20 years ago, that it would become what it's become. And in these times, it's really critical, the work that we do. In fact, right now, as we're recording, there's floods in New South Wales, and that's affecting a whole bunch of our suppliers. Because our job is to deliver customers to small businesses, and that can be really hard. Like you think about that the snooker player. Well, how does he go around finding customers? Does he spend money on Google and Facebook, and maybe he gets a customer and maybe he doesn't? He's a world champion at snooker, not a world champion at marketing. So it makes sense. And, even in the year of COVID, we delivered 743,000 customers to small businesses throughout Australia and New Zealand. And this year we will deliver way over 1 million customers and these are customers that they didn't have to pay for. We work like a travel agent. We just take a little clip of the ticket, and if I reflect on the economic impact that has, as well as people like you having a fabulous time, because we know what's good and what's great. But I guess after 20 years, that's why I keep doing what I'm doing.
My charity kind of rode the social media boom and was the first to raise $1 million from social media, was the first to kind of really campaign in that new space.
Yeah.
But you were online way before we got started. You came in right at the beginning of the internet revolution, did you not?
Well, it's so funny you say the beginning. At the time, I thought it was the end, because it was 2001, and actually in 2001 there was a tech wreck and a dot-com crash. And I thought, oh my goodness, I thought that internet was really going to be something. I'd spent all my money and created the RedBalloon marketplace, which was, outsourced and a disaster. But it was just so funny because actually I thought it was at the end, and I didn't realize what a pioneer and a trailblazer creating a brand for an industry and a marketplace was. And, I was right back when Google had only been around for a year or so. It was incredible, really, when you think back on it. So yeah, I was. And I guess my background, I'd been a marketing professional and worked for big brands. And I'd also been a marketing consultant when I left corporate life. And I left corporate life when I had kids because I was just looking for more flexibility. But what I realized is that most small businesses, all they want is customers. But the job of branding, which you would know, is expensive and long, and it's hard. And this was before the time of social media. So what I did was create a brand for an industry that didn't have one before, and kind of give it that stamp of approval, that authority. but that took years and years and years. Like in the first, in 2001, I mean, I used to have to beg, like literally beg, say, please, please, please list with us. I want to sell your experience. And they'd say, oh, I don't know, do I have to buy a computer? Like it was so bad. Anyway.
Talk to me about failure. Failure is such a part of success, and the way you handle your mistakes can often determine the level of your success.
I think, I don't know, now that I'm 20 years in, there's more to lose. So
Yeah.
back in the early days, actually, I just gave it a crack, and if it didn't work, okay, it didn't work. But now so many people are dependent on the work that we do, not just our team and our employees, but within our cohort of 2,500 suppliers, there's 50,000 jobs there. So, and this is all about keeping money in Australia. And I'm a big advocate for local business by Australia, homegrown success, all of those things I'm really an advocate for. But, no, it has not been a smooth ride. And people often say, oh, well, it's all right for her. Well, this is a 20-year ride. And I just did some terrible things and made awful mistakes. And a lot of them around technology. That's kind of been my Achilles heel. I guess it's one thing to have a failure, but far more important is what you do about it. And because actually, if you keep having failure after failure and nothing changes, that's the definition of stupidity. So I claim that I'm not stupid. I just needed to find another way. Often people start a business and you will turn, especially if it's beginning to be a bit successful and things are getting out of control, you will turn to the people you love to help you. That is not necessarily the wisest way to find a business partner. And I was in partnership with my husband, and we'd been married for 10 years, and our marriage split up after 10 years of the business in 2011. And that was a really, really tough time. It wasn't necessarily a failure, but navigating the next stage of the business was very challenging. And it took nearly 6.5 years for me to buy him out, because he just didn't want me to buy him out. It's great business. And so there's so many things that I would say to people about creating powerful partnerships. And 4 years ago, together with David Anderson, who'd been a long-time friend and entrepreneur who'd done an exit and was looking for something really purposeful to work on, and he and I came together and created the Big Red Group, with the view that we knew there was so much upside in this experiences space, because RedBalloon has always been about the gift, as you know. It's about the voucher, but there's so many other ways that people use experiences. So we started rolling up an industry and putting a bunch of brands. So one supplier base, one technology base, gave us scale, and that's how we've gone to serving experience every 36 seconds now.
I thought it was every minute. It's much quicker now.
Yeah.
People
want to go and do things.
My research is a bit old. Sorry about that. So I assume you've heard of founder syndrome.
Yeah.
What do you know of it? And how have you overcome it?
That's our head of intelligence wanting to make a contribution about founder syndrome, and I think he's saying it's all about you. Look, I feel very fortunate. One of my colleagues, Gemma Farsnage, who joined me when I was working at home back in 2003, she joined as a product assistant, became a product manager, became a marketing manager. And in around 2010 or 2011, she said, Naomi, you just love this business so much. You're strangling it. And having people around you who will stand up to you and not just believe everything you say, that the fable of the emperor's new clothes. I think it's really, really important for all founders to make sure they find ways to be criticized and constructively. But I was able to see that I was not an expert at everything. And but it took somebody being really brutal with me and holding the mirror up. And I think the founder syndrome is about an inability to listen to others and to open your ears and really learn and discover from others. And I know many founders who it's my way or the highway. And after a while, working with such founders can be exhausting.
I think what you say is really relevant to any budding entrepreneur out there, or any person that's kind of looking at starting up their own thing.
Yeah.
I founded a charity about in 2012, and we experienced immediate success and very huge growth very quickly. And as the person that had gotten the brand, if you like, to that point, I was reluctant to just let go, and I thought that to succeed, I would have to be across everything, and so I found myself in jobs that I was simply not best suited for, and I had to. I think what often happens, for anyone who's new to founder syndrome, what often happens is the person who founds the brand, or who builds the brand, gets so attached to it, and is indeed the reason why it succeeded. So they don't want to end up letting go of it, and they end up kind of controlling the organization as if they're the best person to control it, when perhaps they're the person best to bring the brand to that point, and then let other people help. Because one thing that a co-founder isn't experienced in is how to deal with large-scale growth, and processes and governance and compliance and all of those things that
Fancy words.
yeah, all of those things that are going to become new to you. You're going to end up out of your depth, and you're going to need help, especially if your idea
You're
is
just not
working.
having fun anymore,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're so deep in the detail. And,
yeah.
I am very much a big picture person. And, as Gemma says, she goes, I'm the detail and your devil. And she always has been.
I love that.
So whilst I'm, changing the world, someone actually has to work out how to change the world, and it's not my skill set. And you're exactly right. I've never scaled a business to the size that we have now. And
You're bigger than the big ones you used to work for.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, oh, why do we have to do all of these? But one of the things is that as founders have to learn to trust, and have to trust others, especially professionals. You put good people around you.
I've found, Naomi, and I think this ties into having good people around you and having people that are critical of you in a healthy way. I've found that because I've been on TV since I was about 14, and I found that my life changed instantly as soon as I was on air. Everybody changed. I'll never forget the first time I was ever on a TV that my fellow students watched. I did a little stint on a soap opera, and I rocked up to school after coming back from Sydney for a couple of months, and all the kids were like, "Where have you been?" And I said, "Oh, I've been up in Sydney shooting Home and Away," and none of them believed me. And then about 6 weeks later, it went on air, and my whole life changed like that. And I walked into class, my first class. I'd barely gotten off the train. I was getting hassled on the train and then on the walk, and I got to school quite unnerved. And I walked into class, and every single girl was sitting on a table alone with a spot next to them.
Oh,
They'd
just in
normally
case.
they'd normally all sit together,
Yeah.
and I'd normally sit at the front because I didn't sit with anyone, because I wasn't palatable to the student body. And so I was used to just sitting up the front on my own with a space next to me, because I didn't have a lot of friends at that stage. And I walked into class, and all of the girls had a spot next to them, and they were patting the chair saying, "Come sit next to me, Sam." And all of a sudden they were talking to me. All of a sudden they knew my name. All of a sudden they were interested. All of a sudden my status just completely changed.
I'm no different now than I was when I went on a TV
You're
set,
me. Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm the same person.
Mm.
And I guess one of the things that I have done is a lot of reading, and because I didn't have the business skills I needed, and 20 years ago we didn't have this wonderful ecosystem that we now have. But one of the things that I did realize was my success as an entrepreneur isn't because of me. I was merely the guide, and I found a moment in time and in history where the right things came together. And I've seen this over and over again with entrepreneurs who they think it's them. They do their big exit, whatever, they get a whole bunch of cash and then they go, right, I'm now going to be either an investor or start some more businesses. And time after time, it doesn't work. So I think that I was old enough and mature enough, not 14, but old enough to understand it's not me. I was given the opportunity to be a role model to others. But also it didn't come to me until I was in my 50s. And I know that surprises you. And I really, look about 30, but, whatever. But so I guess I was fortunate. I was mature enough. Two, I knew it was a moment in time. And I would. And the reason why I did Shark Tank and I did the show was to be a role model to others. And therefore, the most delightful thing for me is when people come up to me in the street and say, my granddaughter studied commerce because she watched you on the telly, or I started a business because I saw you on the telly. And that to me was the power of the show. But I've always known it's not me. And then getting the opportunity of working with all of those startups and so forth, I was looking for the people who knew it wasn't about them. It was about how they were going to make a difference to others. So if I look at your own journey, you are completely driven now by purpose of making a difference to others. And when you make that step of maturity, that emotional journey to, oh, my purpose comes from not what I get, but from I give, then on that, and that's like the step from childhood into adulthood. And I know many of 60 or 70-year-old who've not made that journey. So it's not an age-based thing. It's understanding we're here for the good of humanity and for contributing to others. And when we do, the world opens up to us. And then when you do, you allow this space to be able to challenge and say, guys, I want you here. You're in this room to embiggen me so that I can embiggen our community in a different way.
It reminds me of what my sister Connie used to say when we were in our early days of kind of building a charity brand to cut through 55,000 other registered charities. She'd constantly look at me and say, Sam, this is bigger than us. Yeah. This is bigger than us. This is bigger than you, Sam. The whole time reminding me, as you've said, that it's not you. It's not you. And I think that was my sister's way of saying the same thing. Yeah. And really you couldn't be more right. Once I tapped into this kind of giving thing, as you say, my world opened up. Yeah. In ways that I could never have anticipated or even hoped for.
When I was asked to do Shark Tank, there was absolutely no way I was ever going to do that. I'd worked hard in my career, hard to be taken seriously as a businesswoman. And I was in Melbourne and I was chatting to a legendary entrepreneur, Carol Schwartz. We were having lunch. And I said, can you imagine? They've asked me to do this TV show. And she goes, well, tell me about it. And I go, it's reality TV, rolling eyeballs. And I said, people come, they pitch their ideas, and then we help them either with money or in kind or support them and grow their business. And she looked at me and she just said, wow, so 1 million people are going to get to see what entrepreneurship's about. And I go, yeah. And she said, God, I just didn't think of you as stingy. And I go, oh. And she knows I tell this story. And, I just needed to hear that. She said, Naomi, there's millions of kids out there who will never even know what entrepreneurship is unless it's in broad media.
Talk to me about the importance of mentorship.
Mentorship for me is not necessarily a lifelong journey with someone. Yeah. It's about what is the question I need answered now and who would be the best person to answer that question. So, people ask me all the time, will you mentor me? Honestly, I would be the worst mentor because I just go, and hanging out with me isn't going to make you successful, as I've already identified. It's not me. Great mentors ask really good questions. So when people ask me about mentoring, I refer them to mentor walks, which is you get to walk with a mentor once a month. It's very easy. But when I've got a question, I think I wanted to go into retail. Like, we've been an online business forever. And I realized that if people are buying gifts when they're in Kmart or whatever, why wasn't I there? And So I'd met Lorna Inman, who at the time was the CEO of Target. I'd met her at one event and I emailed her and I said, look, I want to go into retail and I don't know how to do it. And she goes, oh, I'm in Sydney. I'll come and see you. So this is like a massive bigwig and she's coming to my business. And at the time it was little, like this would be 14 years ago. She had a coffee with me and she just goes, Naomi, the key to retail is we just want people to stay in store for 5 minutes more because we know they'll spend. So if your product keeps people in store, you'll get an ear. Gold, it's all I needed. And then we're off and running.
Many of my mentors have given me only a sentence or two. In fact, I tend to judge the quality of their mentorship by their word count.
That's right.
most good mentors can give you one sentence and it's enough. You know, I'll never forget. I needed. My sister insisted that every penny we raise goes to cancer research only. So I wasn't allowed to do what other charities do, which is to spend a little bit of the donated dollar on yourself. So because we had to pass on 100% of all dollars to research only upon my sister's insistence, I had to fund the charity separately to donations, which is unusual in not-for-profit. One of the reasons why people donate to us is because we don't touch the donations. In fact, that's one of the primary reasons why they support us. So in electing to do it the hard way at first, it ended up kind of paying off in spades. But I'll never forget trying to find my first $100,000 so that I could fund food and fuel for a unicycle trip around Australia that would last 1 year. And I ended up, for 18 months, I'd go and pitch to my sole investor and try and convince this person that I was ready. And often I got sent away to go and take care of things and make it better so that this person wouldn't waste their money, because the person wasn't going to give me $100,000 until that person was absolutely certain that I had the structure and the processes in place to raise $1 million off that investment.
Yeah.
The deal was, I'll give you 100,000 if you raise $1 million. And so I had to prove that I could raise $1 million. That took many, many months. And my sister was dying. And I was terrified of being away on a unicycle and not being able to get to my sister when she died. And it was a matter of great urgency for me. But of course, nobody else felt as urgently about it. And of course they shouldn't. It was urgent to me only. And I'll never forget the day. It's perhaps my happiest day, when we were driving back from a meeting with a sponsor who was going to give us some in-kind support along the way, who had presence in all of these towns. And we were driving away and I said, so after I was sitting in his very expensive car. I'd never been in a car so nice. And I said, so, and he just looked at me and gave the slightest nod, just went like that. And he didn't even punctuate it with a well done or a yes or anything. It was just a slight nod. And that was my approval to start. And I've not looked back since. And I needed him so critically during those 18 months. If I had have left earlier or received the money sooner, I would have failed. When I moved into not-for-profit and started up a little indie charity, I was forced to be so much more creative than I had ever been made to be in the arts. And I am perhaps too opinionated on this. I believe that our CEOs are far more creative than our country's best actors. They are problem solvers. They deal with things on a creative level so far beyond wrangling a character to act. And that was the best lesson I could have learnt in life. And I never would have learnt it if I didn't get scared enough to push into a new realm. I walked away from a very safe position while I was on top. I'd spent 25 years climbing this mountain. As soon as I got to the top, I jumped onto another mountain and started scaling that from the bottom. But I had no interest in sitting there at the top and enjoying the view. And I think you're the same. And then the big red group enabled you to kind of build another mountain. Right. I've got a mentor that's sorry, Naomi. Sorry. I've got a mentor that says you've only got time to build maybe 2, if you're lucky, if you get started early, maybe 3 pyramids. He calls them pyramids. So for me, Love Your Sister is a pyramid. It's a gorgeous structure that I built. Does that resonate with you? I mean, new realms, taking yourself into new places. how important is it to be scared and in a foreign place if you want to succeed?
I think it's really important, but if I reflect back right to the beginning, it's the producers in the arts that take the risk and do that whole getting all of the right team together. And if you think about the arts, then the CEO or the entrepreneur is like the producer. It's getting the right people in the right place at the right time with the right skills and the right equipment. And that's what business is. From the strength of one production or one producer or production house, they go to the next. And it's the same with business, on the success of the basis of what we produced last year in a time of COVID, well, that gives us the funds, the resources and everything to go to the next level. And as individuals as well, all of those experiences, like, I worked through the GFC and now COVID and a whole bunch of other kind of external impacts on business over the last 25 years that I've been self-employed. And so all of that experience gets to go into the next thing. Now, I also sit, and I mentioned cerebral palsy before, but there's an advisory board to Melbourne University and University of Technology, UTS, because I'm involved with those because I truly believe in young people. And I also believe that education is being disrupted. And so being able to bring my entrepreneurial skills to those sorts of conversations, I never know the impact they may or may not have, but I think it's incredibly powerful to take what I've learned and put it into completely different places and see what happens. And that's fun and interesting and keeps me relevant,
Talk to me, if you would, Naomi, before we start talking about your mum. Would you talk to me about your role with the Cerebral Palsy Alliance? When did that start? Why? And what are you doing there?
Actually, it happened years ago. In about 2009, I was asked to sit as an advisor to a program called Best Buddies. And Best Buddies was about being inclusive in schools. So kids who with disabilities often are a bit lonely at school because they don't have many friends. And so we started this program about creating friendships within schools for kids with disabilities. That ended up getting rolled into cerebral palsy. A lot of our clients had CP, and we changed it to being great mates. And that program continues to run. So as that charity, and you mentioned like there's 50,000, and when you see that you've got the same audience, well, why not combine forwards? And I was like, okay, my job here is done. And they said, no, I don't think so. We'd really like you to stay and be with us on our research foundation, because we're all about not just the prevention, but also cure of cerebral palsy, which is a very big and scary thing to say out loud. And I've now sat on that board for about 10 years. And one of the reasons I love working with the team at the Cerebral Palsy Alliance is because it's global research. And you know this as well, research can happen anywhere. And it's about combining incredible research. And there'd been no dedicated research into cerebral palsy, its cause, its impact, its effect. And the outcomes, even in the last 10 years, has been material.
For anyone listening or watching who might want to support the Cerebral Palsy Alliance, I've buried the website somewhere. Do you have it offhand?
If you go to cerebralpalsyaustralia.org.au and click on research, yep, and then the research foundation sits under there. Obviously, CPA is also a charity and raises money for CP, but the research foundation, if you wanted to sponsor a project and whether that be in Australia or overseas, it's there. The Cerebral Palsy Research Foundation.
As a fellow advocate for all things research, I encourage people strongly to donate to the research element, because that really is trying to get to the heart of the issue and solve it, and solve it before it becomes a problem. Before I lose you, I want to talk to you about your art. I looked at your art and I was like, wow, does she have to be fucking good at everything? Like what? I don't know whether to ask you about I want to ask you about your art. For anyone that wants to go and look at it, I want to get a website from you. But I also wanted to ask you whether you're terrible at anything.
Yeah, of course.
Like, because in all my research,
dance.
everything looks so damn successful.
My
I'm
husband and
starting
I,
to get
every year
resentful.
we say, oh, let's learn to dance this year. We do one lesson,
Yeah,
and then we just stand on each other's feet, we laugh, and then we go and have a drink, and we go, right, that doesn't work. So
great.
there's plenty of things that I'm not great at.
Oh, good.
Um,
How long have you been arting?
so 40 years. I know that surprises
Well,
you.
you don't become that you don't become that good at something without putting a lot of time in.
Yeah, I started. I wanted to be an artist, and my art teacher at school said that she could see me starving in a garret and famous after I was dead. And I go, well, that's not meeting my requirements. So, but I've always painted, and in the last couple of years, I've just had more space and time. Our kids have left home and all grown up, and I'm not in the same kind of busy logistics phase that I was. And I'm looking around, and my poor husband, honestly, he will has to wave the white flag. He'll be under a whole bunch of canvases. So I am showing them. I'm doing some commissions. I've got a commission that just went to Melbourne, is hanging in the same room as an Olsen, a John Olsen. So I'm pretty proud of myself with that one. And
Yeah.
I think it's also that because I've had such a full-on and busy business career, creativity is really important, whatever that is. And my writing isn't really creative. I tend to write about what I'm thinking or feeling. It's not a creative space. But when I am in my studio, honestly, a month could go past, Armageddon could happen. I wouldn't know. I'm just lost in the color.
And I always come back to the people listening and watching. And this is a blueprint. Do it all. Do it lots. Don't be so subsumed by your business that you forget to paint. I think it's really important to have those creative outlets that are separate to the thing that you're that you're most.
Am I distracting
about.
you?
Yeah. No,
I thought so. I thought I'd just show you.
Oh, can you? Yes. Oh, look at that.
There you go.
It's beautiful. Can you go a bit closer?
There. I don't know if you can see the detail, but
it's pretty good.
Yeah. So they take me. I started on. Oh, here's some more over here. Oh.
Yeah, please.
Look at taking around the
behind
house.
the scenes inside here.
There you go.
Just beautiful.
They're big, and then I love this kind of, let's get some real color going. That's a bright green one.
For anyone watching or listening, how do they look at your work?
It's naomisimson.com.
Simson, Simson, no P, Simson.
Yeah, and I like this one a lot.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
I
really like them. They're very easy on the eye.
Yeah, and naomisimson.com paint.
Hey, before I lose you, can you talk to me briefly about your mum and why she's important?
Well, my mum is such a gorgeous human, and she's basically a heart on legs, but she's also a brain, and meaning that as a young girl, I would go off to kindergarten, and for show and tell, I'd say my mum works in computers, and I would bring the printouts and so forth. And she worked on one of the early computers in Australia at the maths department at Monash University. And back in the day, computer science was 50% women and 50% men. It wasn't as it is now. And when I asked Mum, why isn't there more women in STEM? She said, it's when they made maths a prerequisite for doing computer science, and which I think is really interesting. So Mum has always been this incredible role model, but also my dad, of course, was always pitching in at home, because you can't have two parents working full time and then also Mum coming home and doing all the cooking or everything. And so they were always divided and conquered. So it was a partnership. My parents have been married now for 59 years, coming up in May. And so I think that my dad also was pretty groundbreaking back in the day, just because that was when, women were not supposed to work if they were married. I mean, it's a long time ago, but he was very supportive, and was very supportive of my sister and my education. And I know that might sound odd, but that was back in the day. So mum would drag me along to work events, and it was just normal for me. And she worked for a great Australian entrepreneur by the name of Lindsay Cattermole, and her business was Aspect Computing. And I would go to work events, and my mum would say, "Oh, if she can do it, sweetheart, you can do it."
Thank you for writing for our Dear Mum book.
Oh, it's so my pleasure. You know, why would you not want to sing your mother's praises when they did just, you know, I wouldn't be who I am.
Your
Oh,
copy's
wow.
your copy's on its way. There's an illustration there by Academy Award-winning illustrator Sean Tan, who I love. These little critters that come throughout the book, appropriate critters for the letters that they correspond with. It's a collection of letters to mums. It's a celebration of mums. And there's over 90 letters here written by some of Australia's most notable notables. We've got business leaders and pioneers and Australians of the Year and showbiz folks and musicians and all kinds of interesting, fascinating people have agreed to take part in this book. Not in the least Naomi Simson. You were on my dream list because we don't know each other. For anyone listening or watching, we are total strangers. But I had you on a hit list a long time ago, and it's good to have finally reached you. And thank you for contributing. I believe the book is much richer because of your contribution. So many things that we can glean from this conversation, which has been so rich. I'm so grateful. Naomi Simson, it's my pleasure to meet you.
Oh, it's so lovely to meet you, and I'm pretty sure we won't be strangers now.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so. Thanks for your time. I understand that it's valuable, and once more I appreciate it. And all the best. And don't forget to check out the Cerebral Palsy Alliance. Don't forget to check out her art. Don't forget to go and grab an experience on RedBalloon. I'm a fan, Naomi. Thank you.
Oh, so my pleasure. Always happy to chat.
All the best.